Senator Kennedy is recognized from Louisiana for 5 minutes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Chairman Powell, I want to start unusually for me with a statement as opposed to a question. I have been very supportive of you and the Federal Reserve and its independence. That was my position with the Trump administration. It will be my position for what it's worth with the Biden administration. And in fact, I have said both publicly and privately, Mr. Chairman, that the single most important thing that was done to save the world economy, not the American economy alone, the world economy from melting down at the during the shutdown last March, was your decision to implement a foreign currency swap line when the whole world was not looking for treasuries, they were looking for dollars. There's an effort going on worldwide to blur the line between government and politics on the one hand and central banks and their independence on the other. I see every day central banks getting more and more involved in fiscal policy and lobbying legislators with respect to the adoption of fiscal policy. I've noticed that the Bank of England has announced in its QE program that it is going to stop purchasing corporate bonds from companies that it thinks has too big of a carbon footprint. I've noticed recently that the Reserve Bank of New Zealand has decided it's going to start in its policy making, its monetary policy, taking account of housing prices. Now, this is where I'm headed, Mr. Chairman. The Federal Reserve needs to maintain its independence in America. Your credibility depends on political independence. I give you Turkey if you don't believe me. And besides that, the Federal Reserve and the good people in it are unelected. They don't have democratic accountability. And my concluding point, and I'm just going to ask you to respond briefly. Some people are going to beat on you, Mr. Chairman, like you stole Christmas, to get involved in social policy and the guise of economic policy. And for the long-term health of the Federal Reserve, you need to resist that.
Thank you, Senator. So I do think Fed independence, and thank you for your strong support on that. I do think that Fed independence is an institutional arrangement that has served the public well over time. And I am strongly committed to continuing it. I also would agree that getting off of our home base and straying from our mandate is something that will put independence at risk over the long term, because we have this precious independence because we have a limited mandate and we stick to it. If we're going to be playing on every issue, then the case for our independence weakens. We should have as little, there should be very few examples of independent agencies that aren't part of the administration.
And you're one of them, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize for cutting you off, but I want to stay within my time, and I need to ask Secretary Yellen a question. Secretary Yellen, the Biden administration's plan, and it is your plan, to require the IMF to issue $1 trillion of these SDRs, new SDRs, is going to cost the American taxpayer about $180 billion. Now, your reason for doing that is a good reason. You say you want to help poor countries. But you and I both know that only about 10% of that money is going to go to poor countries. It's not going to help poor countries. It's going to help if they cash in their SDRs. It's going to help China. It's going to help Russia. It's going to help Venezuela. And besides that, under your plan, you're intentionally splitting the plan into two tranches of $500 billion each to avoid having to come before Congress. And I don't understand why it is efficient to charge the American taxpayer $180 billion, all of which we have to borrow, and you say you're doing it to help poor countries, and only 10% is going to poor countries, and even more is going to Russia and to China.
I'm sorry, it's not going to cost the taxpayer $180 billion.
Sure it is. You're going to have to borrow the money. You don't have the money sitting in a checking account.
The
They're gonna-
IMF,
They're going to redeem those SDRs, not just the poor countries, but China.
there are many countries that can provide hard currencies in return for SDRs, including the United States. If the United States does agree to provide SDRs, it will have to issue treasury bills or debt to do it, but it will also
I rest my
earn-
case.
It will,
I rest
no,
my case.
I'm sorry, but it will also earn interest on any amounts that it converts on behalf of other countries, and it will be essentially a wash.
But the money will
So
never
it
be
will
paid
borrow
back.
and it will pay. It does. There is no money to be paid back.
Sure
It doesn't
is.
matter. The interest that we earn on any excess SDR holdings offsets the cost of issuing treasuries, and it's essentially a wash, and it is not costly.
I disagree with you, Madam Secretary. I think no disrespect, but I think you're wrong. I think we're going to have to borrow all $180 billion of this.
I
We're
don't
gonna
know
have
where
to-
you.
We're going
I don't know where you got a number
Well-
like that from.
Well, when China comes to redeem its SDRs and says we want dollars, where do you think we're going to get the money? We're going to
Well,
borrow it. I've
well,
gone over. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but this is an important issue. I'll call you, Madam Secretary.
Okay, I'd be glad to talk about it offline.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Sort of